Hello everyone. Today I wanted to take another look at the Dirtywave M8, specifically the groove, tempo, and just how the clock kind of functions within the device itself, and how you can kind of push and pull, create swing, other micro-timing stuff, tuplets, etc. So without further ado, let's dive right in. So I've set up this kind of project right here, just with a bunch of different examples to illustrate all of the different stuff you can do to mess with time in the device. So I have this basic loop right here that we can listen to that we'll do our first couple of examples in. So if we go into this, which is the hi-hat pattern, all of these steps are an equal distance apart from one another right now. So each row is kind of acting like an evenly divided 16th note. So if I hit Shift up while I'm in the phrase view, I'll go into what's called the groove page. And you can see that in the bottom right where there's a little G highlighted on the mini map, and also at the top where it says groove 00. So groove 00 is going to be what your project defaults to, the groove that your project defaults to for the entirety of the song, unless you call another groove in the middle of one of your phrases. So what this page is illustrating is the number of ticks it takes to progress through each step in the phrase. Now, what's a tick? So the M8 runs at, the clock is synchronized at 24 pulses per quarter, or 24 ppq. What that means is there's 24 ticks in the span of each quarter note. So if we're back on our phrase page here, a quarter note is going to be this, 4 steps, 4 16th notes equals 1 quarter note. The fact that it's a quarter note is kind of irrelevant, but we're just going to use the verbiage that is common. So there's 24 ticks across the span of this highlighted section. So if you obviously take 24 and divide it by 4, you're going to get 6. So what that means is each step is 6 ticks long. It takes every 6 ticks, the sequencer is going to advance to the next step. So if I hit play, you'll see the playhead in here kind of bounce back and forth. Now, what this groove page is doing is kind of being a little bit smart, is it functions similar to the chain view. If you have like an isolated chain by itself where it's looping, it just kind of goes over and over again. When it hits the bottom down here on step 7, it jumps back up to the top. On the groove page, it does something similar. So it advances to step 1 after 6 ticks, and then after another 6 ticks, it jumps back up to 0 again. Realistically, what's happening is it's easier to think about, in my opinion, is the entire page filled with 6 ticks. So then it's kind of one-to-one representation of what's happening on the phrase page. There's 6 ticks between every single step. Now, there doesn't have to be. I'm going to clear all this out really quickly. So if you take a look at the bottom down here where it says step tick equals 6, obviously that's what the 6 is. Inside the parentheses where it says total 96, that's the number of ticks that are happening over the course of this entire phrase. So from step 0 on your phrase page all the way down to step F is going to be, it's going to take 96 ticks for that to happen. So what's interesting about how the grooves function on the M8 is you can change the length of any one of these steps kind of arbitrarily. But what I think most people are going to try and gravitate towards on the groove page is getting a little bit of swing out of the sequencer. Now, the easiest thing to illustrate this is what's called 16th note swing. So what this means is the first 16th note is a little bit longer than the next 16th note, and then it kind of alternates back and forth between those. So if you hold down edit on the first step and hit up, it's going to increment the first step and decrement the second step. So it adds one to the first step and takes away one from the second step. And this kind of achieves that 16th note swing that I was talking about. Now, you may or not be able to hear that. I'll jump ahead a little bit here. My groove 1 here I have set to 8/4. So the first is going to be 8 ticks long, and then the second step is going to be 4 ticks long. Then the third step is going to be 8 ticks long. The fourth step is going to be 4 ticks long, etc., repeating. And you may or may not be able to tell that this has a little bit more of a groove, for lack of a better word, to it. If you pay close attention to the distance, the odd numbered steps here, you'll see that the playhead spends less time on those steps. It's kind of like lurching forward. Now, it doesn't have to be as dramatic as this. You can go down to 7/5. That's a little bit, it's like splitting the difference basically, right? So it's like a little bit closer to being straight 16th notes. That's when all of the 16th notes are equal lengths. It's called being straight. Versus swung, which is where the first is longer than the second. Or we can make it more dramatic, 9/3. And we can push this even further. Doesn't even really sound like the odd numbered steps are even in there anymore. They're like ghost notes almost. So it can be fun to mess around with even just the balance between those two values to get different push and pull in the rhythm of your sequence. So that's 16th note swing. So if any of you are coming from like the jazz world, there's 8th note swing, which is a little bit harder to do on this particular device, in my opinion. This is my kind of approximation of it. So in 8th note swing, we're trying to achieve that same idea where the first 8th note is longer than the second 8th note. Now, an 8th note in M8 world is 2 steps long. So the first 2 steps is 2 16th notes. 2 16th notes makes 1 8th note. So if this is my approximation of 8th note swing is going to be the first 8th note is 15 ticks long, and the second 8th note is 9 ticks long. Now, this isn't perfect in my opinion. I mean, the way that you achieve 8th note swing and perform it in like a jazz context is a little bit not as black and white as it is in electronic music world, but this is just to say, or to show, that you can make these kind of swinging grooves or uneven grooves happen across not just a pair of groove steps, but as many as you want. Now you see if I hover over these and hold edit, my total number of ticks is still 96. So I'm not changing the length of the phrase at all with my particular eighth note swing situation here. Now, if you wanted to do triplet swing, which is something kind of specific, then we're going to break out a different groove idea. And I have that under groove 3, or triplet, I guess. And what I'm doing here is each step is 8 ticks long. And then I have this 0, 0 on step 3. Now, what 0, 0 means when it's in a groove is basically that's going to skip that step. So if I go back over to the phrase view and hit play, you'll see the play head kind of play 0, 1, 2, and then skip 3 and go to 4, and continue that pattern onward. Applied to the whole song, it sounds like this. So I could use this groove 03 to do the triplet swing idea that I've illustrated here, or if you wanted to write something in 12/8, it would be good for that purpose as well. Skipping the last 16th note of every one of these would give you a total of 12 eighth notes throughout the duration of the phrase. So we can take this skipping steps idea a little bit further and outside of the swing world and move into different meters. So we can take our groove, and you can see here I have 6, 6, 6, 6, 6, 6, 6, 6, 6 all the way down, and the last 4 I have 0. So basically what that means is I'm skipping the last 4 steps on the sequencer. And what this does, I've also just put these off commands here just to show that they're being skipped. But what this does is effectively makes the phrase run as if it was in 3/4. Right? And you can take this even further to do other types of asymmetric meters. Like if we just skip the last 2 steps, that'll give us 7, 8. And if I skip the last 6 steps, that'll give us 5, 8. Right? So you can do a bunch of different fun stuff with the grooves like this. You're into less common time signatures, the groove table is going to be your best friend. So we've kind of covered like blanket applying grooves to your entire pattern, but you can also insert a groove temporarily to do something like a triplet fill. So if we listen to the end of this phrase right here, or chain, these steps right here are going to be a triplet. So these 3 notes are occurring over the span of a quarter note, which would make them an 8th note triplet. So I'm using that same groove 03 pattern where each one of the steps is 8 ticks long and it skips the 4th step. I call that at the on beat 3 basically, or row 8 in M8 world. And then I call groove 1, which is my swung groove, on row C. So I'm only in groove 3 over the span of these steps. So what that means is steps 0 through 7 are all going to be 6 ticks long. Steps 8, 9, and A are all going to be 8 ticks long. Step B is going to be 0 ticks long, so it's just going to be skipped. And then steps C, D, E, and F are all going to be 6 ticks long. So it's important when you're injecting these kind of triplet or tuplet ideas that you're basically doing your math correctly. Because if you put the tuplet on one track and not the others, you want the playhead to line back up with everything else. So this is 24 steps, right? So over the length of a quarter note, we want 24 ticks, right? So this is 24. And our normal groove is also going to be 24 across over the span of 4 of these steps. So my playhead effectively will sync up with everything else that's not performing a tuplet. We don't lose any time, basically, or gain any time when we're inserting that tuplet. It's important to not insert or take away time if you want everything to be synced up, that is. But if you don't want everything to be synced up, that's also possible. I have this little polymetric example here. On track 6, I am using our 3/4 groove. So this is a measure of 3/4. And then on the other 2 tracks, I believe 4 and 7, they're both in 4/4. So if you're into polymeters or maybe more generative stuff, longer form, evolving patterns, you like stuff getting out of sync with each other, it's definitely achievable with grooves, combined with the fact that each one of the track's playheads can be in a different position within a chain, can be compounded with all of these different features. So that's polymeter. We sort of touched on polyrhythm with that insertion of a triplet, but we can be a little bit more deliberate about it, applied to a whole sequence. So here is a two against three polyrhythm. And all this is kick drum on quarter notes. And then snare is doing quarter note triplets. I'm still using the groove 03, so it's still the 8 ticks, but because I have them spaced out, they're just twice as long, effectively making them quarter note triplets. This off command is showcasing or highlighting which steps are being skipped. So because the M8 runs at 24 ppq, it makes doing the stuff that I've highlighted so far relatively easy, because 24 is easily divisible by 2, 3, and 4, etc. If we want to do some more advanced stuff, or rhythmic devices that are less common in, I don't know, dance music or just other Western music, stuff like quintuplets or other higher order tuplets, we have to kind of bend the rules and mess with how the M8 works. So first, I'll show this is my kind of approximation of a tuplet, or a quintuplet specifically. Wait. So what I'm trying to do is have 5 notes happen in the span of 8/16 notes, or 2 quarter notes. Right? It sounds almost right, but not quite. So because 24 isn't divisible by 5, I had to kind of cheat a little bit. So each one of these steps I made 10 ticks long. The first 4 I made 10 ticks long, and then the last one, the 5th step, I made only 8 ticks long. And that was just to kind of, and then I'm skipping 3 steps in a row. And that just kind of gets it as close as possible to being even. And for something rhythmic like this, it's close enough. Now, if you have a sustained note, it's going to be a little bit more obvious that these are not exactly even. If I want to do it for real, which you can, you have to unfortunately do some math. This is what it sounds like, an actual quintuplet sounds like. Pay close attention to the tempo real quick. I'm going to play the fake one. And now I'm going to play the real one. So, to make it like a real quintuplet, we're unfortunately going to have to do some math. I'm going to do it down here because I think it's fun. So, in M8 world, with normal default settings, our groove is 96 ticks long, right? So in normal M8 world, a phrase is 96 ticks long, if you remember from before. And our tempo is 135 beats per minute. Now, if we want the length of our 1 bar to be divisible by 5 as well as divisible by 2, because we want 2 of these quintuplets to occur over the length of 1 bar. Or if you think about it a different way, we want 1 quintuplet to last half of a bar, so it has to be divisible by 2. One of these numbers is 80. 80 is divisible by both 2 and 5. And then, set it to x, and you do your cross multiplication thing, and you get x equals 112.5. So I guess it's not exactly the same because it's half of a BPM faster than it was before. But I don't know, it's pretty damn close to me. Now we have our tempo and our tick rate. So the whole length of our phrase needs to be 80 ticks long, as you can see in the bottom. So I'm able to make 5 steps of equal length and then skip 3. And then theoretically I could do the same thing and it would equal that 80 ticks. But then, because we've we've changed the length of our steps, which you can see I have here, groove 08, where each step is going to be 5 ticks long. And this is functionally the same as this. So if you listen really closely, when I compare the fake quintuplet to the real quintuplet, you might notice that the snare sounds slightly different. And this is because everything inside of the M8 is governed by the tempo. All of your instrument envelopes are going to be determined by the tempo of the song, right? So all of these are measured in ticks, but if you slow your tempo down, you're effectively making the envelope longer because it's the same number of ticks, right? Total or long. But because the tempo is moving slower, it means the envelope is open for longer. Like if we take a look at this volume envelope here, the decay says 2 steps, 2 ticks, but because our tempo is slower, those 2 steps take longer to happen, so the envelope is open for longer. The one exception to this would be the ADSR envelope. This is based fully on time, like in seconds, not the tempo of the song, so they're not synchronized with one another. So if you want your instrument to sound the same at every tempo, use an ADSR envelope. Another thing to keep in mind is these little tooltips at the bottom where it says like 1 phrase, 3 steps, however many ticks. This is all determined by the kind of default groove, or I guess the default, like if your phrase was 96 ticks long, it's basing the phrase step tick thing all off of that. So the second you modify a groove, this isn't exactly accurate anymore. And it's kind of best to just listen to it by ear anyway, in my opinion. But just something to keep in mind. I guess like theoretically, Tim could make this like however many ticks this is. You could make this say 96 ticks instead of 1 phrase. But I think I don't know how practical that would be for the majority of people. 1 phrase has more meaning behind it for the majority of people than 96 ticks. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I kind of do this by ear anyway. I rough it in to like a quarter note or whatever, and then I'll adjust it as I see fit. Just something to think about if you're messing with the groove a lot. So something else we can do with grooves is we can get our phrase to move like twice as fast or half as fast. So if I play something like this, what we're hearing is 4 16th notes, 4 8th notes, and then 8 32nd notes. But we're getting that all in 16 steps. We're just getting the phrase to move at different rates by injecting these different grooves as the thing goes on. So to get the phrase to move half as fast, we can use this idea where we double the amount of ticks it takes to advance 1 step. So each step takes 12 ticks. The total length of the phrase is going to be 192 ticks. Now, if we wanted to move twice as fast, we do the opposite, which would be 3 ticks per step, and the length of the entire phrase is only going to be 48 ticks long. So that can be useful, but you can also achieve something like this ratchet idea by using the, where is it? The retrigger command, and just like it'll retrigger a note. Regardless, it's something you can do. But something I want to highlight is using this 12 this higher degree of granularity per step to our advantage. So I'm running this at 127 BPM. If I double the tempo to 254 BPM and still use that 12 tick per step groove, I get the same, resulting in the same, it results in the same tempo basically. So we can use this extra granularity in the microtiming of our phrases for stuff like if we wanted to do that 16th note swing that we did way back at the beginning of the video. You can take our groove 04 here, which is originally 12 and 12 ticks, and change it to 13 and 11. And then we get this. Which is pretty close to being straight 16th notes, but it has a tiny bit of swing injected in there. But you'll also hear, if I compare it way back to what we did at the beginning, all of my drums sound choked basically because I'm using the same instruments, but because the tempo is twice as fast, all of my modulators are and all of my envelopes are open for a smaller amount of time, half as long. So it basically makes my snare super choked, my hi-hat super choked, very short, very kind of percussive. So it's just something to keep in mind. So here's a super secret, not really secret, but you know, bonus tip if you made it all the way through this video. If you're interested in microtiming and having even more granularity than what the grooves will offer, you don't feel like multiplying your tempo by 3 or whatever to get that extra functionality. This is how I approach microtiming. If I wanted to take this snare and lay it back behind the beat, is what I would do is put it on beat 2 or wherever, just not beat 1 in a phrase, and then select it and quick render it. Now I have that as instrument 8, so I'll just make a new phrase, a new chain, and I have this. All right? Not super helpful because the snare is so late, right? Oh no. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it here and I'm going to put it here, as if I was making a normal drum beat. Here, wait. What? Kick, snare, kick, snare. Now this isn't going to be terribly helpful because the snare is going to wind up down here on top of the kick. But because we have so much space in front of the snare drum, we can... There it is. We can offset the start position of the sample. Yes. This should be, I think 40, which is 64 offset. We should put you right on top of the beat. Yeah, it's a little hard to hear, but might be missing the very beginning of it. But if we wanted to lay this beat back a little bit and have the snare drum a little bit late, you can, you know, add basically some air before the beginning of the sample. Obviously, this would be more effective if I did it on every single sample, but you kind of get the idea. So you could like combine this with, oh, where's delay? Combine this like this. And get these really kind of wonky, like drunk kind of sounding grooves. Just to kind of illustrate a little bit more what I'm doing. So I have all of this air in front of the sample, basically, before it starts. And all I'm doing by using this STA command is changing where the start of the sample actually is. So effectively what I'm doing is moving the start point closer or later from the beginning of the sound itself. So closer or further away to the transient. So like this is the transient of the sample. If I want it to be further behind the beat, I move the start point of the sample further back this way. If I want it to be closer to the beat, I move the start point of the sample closer this way. And this is something you can either do inside, you can edit the sample directly and do it this way, or you can do it how I did here and change it on the FX command, and that'll, then you can like kind of do it, you can change it with every step or what have you. I think you can you modulate the start position with an LFO? Yeah, you can do that too if you like want it to be continuously variable, basically. You can set it to an LFO. And then you can get kind of more of a human feeling by having it move where it lands over time. So yeah, that's basically everything I wanted to cover as far as the groove side of the M8 is concerned. Please take this information and experiment and try and develop your own ways of using these tools. Let me know what you're able to accomplish in the comments, and please feel free to ask me any questions. I'm toying with the idea of doing more of these types of videos. If you have suggestions for things that you'd like me to do, be it on the M8 or something else, let me know. Also, if you happen to be watching this right when it comes out, I have an album coming out this Saturday, March 15th. I'll put the Bandcamp link in the description of this video. Yeah, thank you very much for watching. See you all soon.